Coming up next on Kids TV and Me, author, illustrator, and children's television enthusiast Joshua Stauffer will be talking to you today about this.
Oh dear, we've had too many very last bites.
Oh no, you were right. But how do we stop?
You know what we need?
Another cookie?
Yes. No! We need willpower.
Ah, yes, willpower. Is that a type of cookie?
Willpower is trying hard not to do something that you really want to do.
Oh, you mean like trying not to eat all these cookies?
Mm-hmm.
I see. Willpower is a very good thing to have.
Remember, willpower.
Hello everybody, my name is Joshua Stauffer, and welcome to Kids TV and Me, Episode 3. Kids TV and Me is an analytical podcast where an autistic nerd dissects his favorite children's television shows. Last week we examined 3 episodes of Kipper the Dog. We did the Tag Sale, aka the Jumble Sale, Hide and Seek, and the Flying Machine. Hide and Seek was my favorite out of those 3 because when I was a little kid I loved counting to 10, and this episode also taught me that counting to 5 twice will also give you 10. Today we're going to begin examining an animated series from Apple TV Plus, based on one of my favorite children's books of all time, Frog and Toad by Arnold Lobel. When I was a kid, I was a huge Frog and Toad fan. I read all the books, I listened to the books on cassette at school, and I also had a VHS tape of these claymation shorts produced by John Matthews that came out in the 80s. These little claymation films based on the Frog and Toad stories, and those were some of my all-time favorite videos. So what we're going to do with Frog and Toad is, with reading Rainbow and Kipper, I'm just going to examine, my favorite episodes that I watched a million times on tape when I was little. But with these 2 Apple TV shows, Frog and Toad and Harriet the Spy, which will start next week, I am in fact going to go through the entire series because they both had a pretty short run. Frog and Toad had 18 half hours and Harriet had 20. So we should be able to get through the entire series in about a year and a half, if we do a 1 episode per month. Now, this examination series is going to be what I would like to call an Adaptation Examination Edition. Meaning, I'll be comparing the Apple TV show to the classic book. In addition, I'll also compare it to the John Matthews shorts that I enjoyed when I was little. Now, each Frog and Toad program contains 2 11-minute stories, either 11 minutes or 12 minutes, 2 stories per program. The first show has the stories about Cookies and the Letter. Now, Cookies is the 3rd chapter in the book Frog and Toad Together. I was a little surprised that they didn't pick the first chapter of the first book, which is Spring, the beginning of Frog and Toad Are Friends. But I guess the reason they picked Cookies is because that's arguably one of the most popular Frog and Toad stories of all time. And I like that one too. So, without further ado, let's dive right into Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 1A, Cookies. And the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to look at a page or 2 of the book, and then play a minute or 2 of the show, and I'll compare them side by side. So in the book, the story of Cookies begins with Toad baking some cookies, and he tastes one. They say they smell really good, and they taste even better. And then he runs over to Frog's house and lets Frog try his cookies, and Frog says that they're the best cookies he's ever eaten. So let's see how they do that on Apple TV. Alright, so this episode begins with these 3 robins right outside of Toad's house, and apparently they're looking in the window, watching Toad bake his cookies. They can see what he's doing, and they smell him too. Well, one thing I forgot to point out is that, unfortunately, this show doesn't really have a proper opening sequence. There's no theme song or anything, it just says an Apple original, and then it cuts right to the episode title card with a nice little tune. And it is kind of interesting, though. It's set up like the cover of a book, except it's animated. Like it says Frog and Toad, and then right underneath it, it has the episode title. In this picture, we see Frog and Toad having tea together. It's actually quite reminiscent of the first page of Frog and Toad Are Friends, the title page of that book. So just like in the book, Toad makes the cookies, and he pulls them out, and he tastes one, and it's really good. And then he's getting ready to take the cookies over to Frog's house, but on the way, he says hello to one of the robins. And they're talking for a little bit. Robin's saying that you make the best cookies in the world, they smell so good. And Toad's like, oh yes, these cookies are very good. And the robin is like, he says, you know, robins love really nice, good cookies like the ones you make. And Toad says, oh yes, and Frog loves them too. That's why I gotta take these over to Frog's house so I can share them with him. And so he walks away and says goodbye. And the robin's all disappointed because apparently she wanted to have some cookies too. I'll bet you anybody who has read this story before, or at least seen the John Matthews version, probably knows where this situation with the robins is leading up to towards the end, but I'm not going to spoil it just yet. Oh, I'm so off today. I keep forgetting to say important things. Yes, this podcast does contain spoilers, so if you want to watch these shows ahead of time, you can go over to Apple TV Plus. The entire Frog and Toad series is there. This is Season 1, Episode 1, Cookies and the Letter. If you haven't watched it yet, go ahead and do that. Enjoy. Or if you have seen it, let's continue. The art design on this show is so good. I like the way they drew the backgrounds, and Frog and Toad's houses are so beautifully detailed. This is 100% 2D animated. Very reminiscent of the classic 90s Nelvana style. Like the shows that I grew up with, like Little Bear and Franklin and Maggie and the Ferocious Beast. It feels very much like one of those classic shows. Now, like I said, these are each 11-minute episodes, but in the John Matthews version, and even the audiobooks, they were a lot shorter. They were like between 4 and 5 minutes each. So for the Apple TV version, they really add a lot to the story to kind of make it bigger and flesh it out a bit to make it a little more interesting. Because here we see Toad arriving at Frog's house, and he tells Frog that he's made these cookies, he wants you to try some. And so instead of, in the John Matthews version, Toad like picks up a cookie and shoves it into Frog's mouth, and he's like, mmm! But instead, here, Frog picks up one of the cookies himself, and he looks at it, sniffs it, and tries to savor the moment before taking a little bite out of it and tasting it to see if it's good. And of course, he says, these are the best cookies I've ever eaten. Well, that's what he says originally, but here he says, these are the best cookies you've ever made. So Frog loves them, and of course Toad is thrilled, and then they just dance around the room real happy, celebrating the fact that Toad made the best cookies in the world. Then they sit down and say, shall we each have one? Yes, this will be our special treat for the day. So they plan on having one instead of just diving right in and eating cookie after cookie after cookie. And then after that, they sit there for a second, they're like, shall we have one more? Yes, we shall. And so they do. And then instead of agreeing to eat a third cookie, they decide to each pick one up and just take one bite out of it. And that kind of backfires because they end up eating another bite and eventually the entire cookie, of course. So they don't eat near as many cookies in this version as they did in the book and the claymation short. And so that's when Frog finally realizes what's going on and is like, no, we're eating too many here. We need willpower. Which, of course, is the main core of this story. Toad says, what is willpower? And he adds, is that another cookie? That wasn't in the book. And of course, Frog explains that willpower is trying hard not to do something that you really want to do. Toad says, you mean like trying not to eat all these cookies? Frog says, right. Now, normally this would cut to the next scene where Frog puts the cookies into a box, but first, they're just sitting there looking at the cookies, feeling tempted. They just about reach out to get another one. Frog's like, nope, not doing that. We need willpower. Now Frog gets a box out of the cupboard and puts the cookies into it. Now in the Apple TV version, Toad is actually pretty enthusiastic about Frog's ideas of trying to hide the cookies so they won't eat them. Whereas in the earlier versions, Toad was just a little bit annoyed by this. He just wanted more cookies. However, Toad's still pointing out the fact that, well, the cookies are in the box, but we can still open it up and then eat them. So then Frog ties some string around the box. And here's another change. Instead of Toad saying, but we can cut the string and open the box, he says that we can just simply untie the string and open the box. And every time they try one of those things, they in fact do open up the box and look at the cookies. And in the second round, they untie the string and open the box. So Frog must not have tied the string on very tight, or else, because they didn't have to cut it. Oh yeah, now Frog's putting the box up on a high shelf, climbing the ladder and setting the box up there, near the ceiling. And Toad's like, yay, another good idea, but we could climb the ladder and untie the string and open the box and get the cookies. Oh yeah, you're right. I don't think Frog says that is true every time. He just says, oh, good point, yeah, you're right. And sure enough, Frog climbs the ladder again and takes the box down from the shelf and unties the string and opens the box. That string's gonna get worn out to keep doing this. Okay, now this is where the episode really starts to get interesting, because there's a ton of stuff between the box on the shelf scene and the end. Yeah, in the book it just cuts to the final part of the story after the shelf part, but here we have more. Frog and Toad are gonna try to hide the cookies somewhere outside. So they're going outside, and there's the robins again. The robins still want to have some cookies, but for some reason, Frog and Toad don't have a clue that that's what they're after. They're just casually talking about how good the cookies are and how they gotta get rid of the cookies somewhere so they stop eating them. And the robins think that this would be a perfect opportunity for them to get the cookies, but Frog and Toad don't really pick up on that. They just proceed on their mission and get ready to bury the box of cookies in the ground to try get themselves to stop eating them. And so they do that, and they said, alright, the cookies are buried. Willpower! And Toad says, but Frog, we can dig the hole back up again and unbury the box of cookies and cut the string and open the box, or untie the string and open the box, but you know what I mean. He's gonna keep saying that over and over again no matter what they try, of course. Now they're tying the box of cookies to a rope and pulling it up over a tree branch so that it'll be up high so they can't reach it. And the robins are standing right there watching them. I mean, they're kind enough not to steal the cookies right there, but they're curious as to when Frog and Toad are gonna let them have some. One of the robins says, hey Frog, perhaps someone else can take those cookies off your hand for you. Frog says, thanks Robin, but we know what we're doing, we got this. We're gonna do this willpower thing ourselves. Now the cookies are up high and they can't reach them. Willpower! And Toad agrees, yes, willpower. But we could untie the rope and catch the cookies as they fall. Which, of course, they do. Then Frog says to the robins, don't worry, robins. We'll find a way to keep these cookies away from us. I don't think that made the robins worry any less, because they're worried that they're never going to eat any. Gee whiz, these guys are so desperate to keep the cookies out of their sights, they're making a little raft out of sticks, and they're going to put the box of cookies on it, and send the cookies down the river. And what do you think Toad says? Yep, but we could run and save the cookies before they go over that waterfall. And yes, the cookies are headed for a waterfall, and they, of course, run and chase the box, and they catch it with a stick just before it goes over. Well, that little raft they built is history, but it's a good thing the box of cookies had string on it. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to catch it with that stick. So they have the cookies once again. What are they going to do with them now? Are they finally going to eat some? They're certainly thinking about it, because Frog says that all that willpower sure works up an appetite. And now, oh, here we go. Frog has one more idea. Now we're getting back to the book, finally. Frog goes back to the robins, and he lets the robins eat all the cookies, much to Toad's shock. Oh, look at Toad's face. It's like, what? I was a little confused at first when the one robin said Thank you, Frog. What an unexpected treat. Because the rabbits were kind of expecting them to give them the cookies all day, but I guess towards the end they kind of gave up a little bit because they saw how determined Frog and Toad were. So they were a little surprised at the end when they finally did get the cookies. So that's why she said unexpected treat. Okay. And of course Toad is disappointed because now we got no more cookies to eat. Frog says, yes, but we have lots and lots of willpower. And Toad walks away saying, you can keep all the willpower, Frog. I am going home now to bake a cake. And just like the book, that is how the episode ends. Alrighty, so that was Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 1A, Cookies. And so far so good, this is a really interesting show. I think what I like best about it is the 2D animation style. Like I said before, this feels so much like something that I would have watched when I was 2 or 3 years old. Not just the animation, but also like the pacing and the dialogue. This show really feels like it was designed with Little Bear fans in mind. And that is perfect because Little Bear was the beginning of Harper and Rowe's I Can Read Books brand, and Frog and Toad is also an I Can Read book. Yeah, Little Bear and Frog and Toad were both published by Harper and Rowe, which is now called HarperCollins. So it's totally appropriate that their two universes would look very much alike. Oh, and I forgot to mention that the robins next to Frog and Toad look huge. What Arnold Lobel tried to do with this universe is scale the animals accurately according to how they would look out in nature for real life. Because, in reality, frogs are very small, often much smaller than birds. And so the birds would look huge next to the frogs and toads. As far as the cookies story goes, this is without question one of the most memorable Frog and Toad stories of all time. I have the John Matthews version memorized word for word, right down to the point where I remember exactly how many cookies they ate. In the John Matthews version, Toad ate 8 cookies, and Frog ate 6. But in this version, Frog and Toad each only ate 4. So that was interesting. The lesson on willpower is a very good lesson for kids to learn. Actually, a good lesson for adults to learn too. But I'm not 100% sure if Frog and Toad actually learned this lesson or not. Because, like Frog said, willpower is trying not to do something that you want to do, and it was really hard for them to stop eating cookies when the cookies were right in front of them. But that's basically what willpower is all about, being able to stop yourself from doing something even when the opportunity is right in front of you. So if they really did have willpower, they wouldn't have had to worry so much about hiding the cookies. The cookies could just be there and they could, ignore them and do other things. It is still good that they gave the cookies to the robins, though, even though that doesn't really count as willpower per se. And of course, Toad is just like, forget it, I'm just gonna go home and make a cake. So Toad has a lot to learn about willpower, and I guess Frog kind of does too. But this story does help kids at least get an idea of what willpower is. Even though it would have been nice, I guess, if we could have seen a character or two actually demonstrating willpower for real. That'll be a good thing to talk to your kids about if they watch this. Like, if they need any clarity as to what it means to have willpower and they're not picking up from this show, you can maybe talk to them about it. Other than that, great episode. Good start to the series. The thing about the cookies story, watching the John Matthews version as a kid, whenever I was eating a bunch of something, whether it be, I never ate that many cookies at once, but if it was something like, I don't know, corn chips or something where I could get a big pile of them and just eat them, chips or pretzels or whatever, I would count them up the way Frog and Toad ate them in the John Matthews version, which usually meant I would take 14 because Frog ate 6 cookies and Toad had 8. Alright, so far so good. That was cookies, and now let's move on to the B episode, which is the litter. I'll be back in a flash to talk to you guys about that. Okay, so the letter is based on the fifth and final chapter of the book Frog and Toad Are Friends. And the title card for the letter is a picture of Frog and Toad sitting on the ground playing checkers together. And the beginning of this episode is actually pretty much identical to the original book story. We see Toad sitting on his front porch and he's looking real sad, and Frog comes by and asks him what the matter is. And Toad says, "This is my sad time of day. It's the time when I wait for the mail to come. It always makes me very unhappy." And Frog asks him why. Well, actually, in the Apple TV version, before Frog asks Toad why he doesn't like waiting for the mail, Frog says, "Oh, but Toad, getting mail's a wonderful thing. Letters, postcards, parcels, even junk mail." And Toad's like, "What is junk mail? It's the kind of mail you don't even want." And Toad says, I wish I could have even junk mail, because I don't get any mail at all." And Frog's like, "No mail? Not ever?" Toad says, "Nope, never. That's why waiting for the mail's a sad time for me." And Toad even points out that he doesn't even get mail on his birthday. And Frog sits down next to him and is like, "Oh, gee, that is sad. I understand why this is a sad time for you." And they just sit there for a minute feeling sad together. And then suddenly Frog has an idea. He says, "I have to go home now, Toad. There's something I must do." And so he jumps off of Toad's porch and he's heading home to his house, Frog's house. And as Frog heads home, we see him jumping over these moss-covered rocks in the middle of a pond. That's kind of cool. You get to see some of the landmarks between Toad's house and Frog's house. I should pay attention to this and see if they use these same landmarks every time Frog and Toad go between each other's houses. That should be interesting. Did I mention that the artwork in this show looks so identical to the illustrations in the book? They really did a magnificent job keeping it true to the original material. Like, this looks a lot more like the original books than the John Matthews shorts did. Of course, to be fair, John Matthews is claymation, and this is hand-painted 2D drawn animation. But I really like it. It's an amazing replica of the original universe that Arnold Lobel created. And there's Frog going into his house. We don't really see a whole lot of the exterior of Frog's house in the books, though. Frog's house in the Apple TV version looks a lot more magnificent than it did in the books. Yeah, because here in the book illustration, it just looks like a little shed all surrounded by plants and flowers. But on the Apple TV show, it actually looks like a real house, and a very nice one at that. I wonder if that house was designed by the same architects that built Grandmother and Grandfather Bear's house on Little Bear. Different design, but I don't know, just something about it. Like, pretty much everything in this show just reminds me of Little Bear. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Little Bear was one of my all-time favorites when I was little. It was right up there with Reading Rainbow and Kipper. So Frog goes into his house and he sits down at his desk and he is going to write a letter to Toad. And we see Frog writing the letter, of course, with the good old-fashioned wooden pencil. The yellow kind with the pink eraser on the end. It's kind of sad that not very many kids today see people do that anymore. Nice, good old-fashioned letter writing. When he's done writing, he puts the letter into an envelope and licks it and seals it shut. And now he's going to mail it. Ooh, and then Frog says, "To town to mail Frog's letter." So there's actually a town on this show. Interesting. In the books, it's just Frog and Toad's houses and a bunch of like meadows and woods and a river. The only real industrial or commercial building that we see in the books is the ice cream shop. So apparently there's going to be that and a lot more. Let's see what this town looks like. Ooh, now we're going to take a look at some of the other characters. A gopher, a really huge gopher, just popped up out of the ground right in the middle of the trail where Frog was walking. And she's got a flower on her head, because apparently there was a flower right where she poked her head out. So that's kind of funny. I don't think we ever saw a gopher in the books, though. I think this character's a new addition for the Apple TV show. And so they say hello, and Toad tells her that he's mailing a letter to Toad, because he's very excited about it. Frog even whispers to the gopher that Toad never got any mail before. Gopher's like, "Oh, that's terrible." Frog walks along, comes up to some kind of stone wall, and here comes Robin. It's one of the same robins that we just saw in the Cookies episode. Did they even call them robins in the book? No, they just said the birds came from everywhere. They picked up all the cookies in their beaks and flew away. So Frog gave the cookies to the birds. What about the other stories? The button, there was a bird in that one too. Was that a robin? No, it was a sparrow. Where do we see robins on this show? Oh, it was, no, I mean, not that show, the book, rather, sorry. Uh, Days with Frog and Toad, Chapter 2, The Kite. There were 3 robins sitting in a bush, and they were making fun of Toad's kite when he couldn't fly it. So I think that was the only time we saw robins in the books, but it looks like here they're making the robins, or at least a robin, a regular character on the show. So that's interesting, because in the books, there aren't really any other recurring characters besides Frog and Toad. All the other animals are just, like, come and go. They only appear in just once. So you actually have a little more consistency with the characters. That is excellent. So anyway, Frog says hello to the robin and tells her about Toad getting his first letter, that he's about to mail it. And the robin says, oh yes, Toad will be very happy about that. And she tells Frog about a really fancy note that she got from somebody that came with a shiny string. And later Frog moves along and he's about to talk to somebody else, I think. And who's that? Another new character named Mink. There was definitely not a mink in the books. But one thing I do recognize is the ice cream shop from Frog and Toad All Year, Chapter 3. The ice cream story. So we actually get to see who runs the ice cream shop. Cool! Mink has a uniform on, and he's got glasses too. And one thing that I must tell you before I continue is that unless I spend hours and hours editing this thing, you're going to notice that a lot of times as I'm recording this podcast, I keep getting the Frogs and Toads names mixed up. Like I say, like Frog when I'm supposed to say Toad, and vice versa. I really apologize for that. Like I'm just noticing it now as I'm playing through it and editing it. So if something doesn't make sense, just go to Apple TV and watch it for yourself. You'll figure out what I mean, okay? So anyway, Frog tells Mink that he's getting ready to post this letter to Toad, and Mink tells him about the time that he got a piece of junk mail that says, "You may already be a winner." And for whatever reason, he says that that was the most exciting day of his life. So I don't know if just the thought of him winning something made him really happy, or if there was actually something in it for him, or what. I mean, junk mail of that kind is usually pretty disappointing, so who knows? And just like in the book, that ice cream shop is built into the trunk of a tree. Next, we see another brand new character, Mole. He's standing in front of a very fancy house surrounded by pink roses. I assume that's where he lives? I'm not sure. I thought Mole lived underground. I could be wrong, though. Mole is very interested in, performing arts. Right now, he's reading a poetry book, or maybe it's Shakespeare, like Hamlet or something, because he's saying, to be, like he's practicing saying to be or not to be, that is the question. And Mole greets Frog in a very fancy way. Ah, salutations and greetings, Frog. And Mole is wearing this hat, I think it's called a beret? It's one of those round things with the little things sticking out the middle on the top. The kind that artists often wear. And after Frog tells Mole about the letter he's giving to Toad, Mole tells the story of how his first letter was a note from his mother saying, "Tonight you shall have spaghetti." And after that, there's the post office. It's a really interesting looking one. It's got a round roof, kind of a fancy looking building, and there's a traditional metal blue mailbox sitting outside. And there's actually a really high post with a mailbox on top, and it's towering over the main building. And Robin just flew up there, and I think either put a letter into the box or, put a letter inside it. So they've really designed this world to accommodate these characters of different shapes and sizes. So it's like the mailbox is a big sign hanging over the post office, but it's actually a real mailbox up high for the birds to reach. Now, this post office has a walk-up window, and who do we see there at the counter? Oh, it's Snail! Just like from the book story about the letter. And of course, you guys all know what happens here. Frog says hello to the snail and shows him the letter. Said, will you please take us to Toad's house and put it in his mailbox? And Snail says, sure, right away. But Snail also says that she never delivered a letter to Toad's house before, and it'll be his first. And we also get a look from inside the post office building, and apparently there's a little ramp that Snail sort of slides up to get up close to the counter. I also noticed that right underneath the counter on the backside, there's these blue tiles there. It almost looks like something that's the Postal Service would have added in the 90s. Like, this is a really historic building, but like they add a few things to it later to make it a little more modern. I'm probably the only person who would notice a little detail like that in a cartoon, but that's me. And seeing the snail handle all the letters with his mouth, or her mouth rather, kind of reminds me of Booker T. Bookworm from Barney and Friends. It was the bookworm puppet that worked in the school library, and he would always grab the books with his mouth, and he even would stamp the books by holding the stamper in his mouth. Makes me think of this snail here now. And after Frog leaves, Snail says, "Next up, Toad's house, duty calls." And she slides down off the ramp and is getting ready to leave the post office. I wonder how she opens the door. I don't think we get to see that, though. Do we? No? Okay. And Frog's heading back to Toad's house, and the design of Toad's house looks exactly like the way it's designed in the book, if I hadn't mentioned that already, with the front porch along the side there. Very iconic style. And then, of course, Frog runs back to Toad's house, and Toad is no longer sitting on his porch. Frog wonders where he is, and he looks in the window and he finds Toad taking a nap. And pretty much everything that happens next is exactly like the book. Frog tells Toad that he should go out and wait for the mail some more, and Toad's like, no, I'm never waiting for the mail again. And Frog keeps trying to get Toad to come out of bed and wait for the mail, but Toad refuses. And Toad says, Frog, why do you keep looking out of the window? Frog says, because now I'm waiting for the mail. Toad says, but there won't be any. Frog says, oh, yes, there will. And Toad's like, oh, really? How do you know? Frog says, well, I was kind of hoping for this to be a surprise, but I know you're going to get a letter because I have sent you a letter. And that's what does it. Toad gets excited, jumps right out of bed, and runs outside to the mailbox. And then Frog says, Criminy? Is that supposed to be like an alternate version of Jiminy Cricket, like an interjection? Criminy used to express surprise or disbelief. That's new to me. Never heard that in a cartoon before. So now Frog and Toad are outside. Toad's all happy that he's finally going to get a letter, and he asks Frog what he wrote in the letter. And Frog says, I wrote, Dear Toad, I am glad that you are my best friend. Your best friend, Frog. And Toad says, oh, that makes a very good letter. Now here's a little interesting addition. Toad asks Frog, do you think Snail will be here with my letter soon? And Frog says, yes, quite soon. Quite soon is also what he said about the garden and how fast Toad's seeds would grow. But we'll get to that in a different episode. Then we cut to cut to Snail, who is sort of sliding along the path. It appears to be very slowly, but Snail's working hard. Says, phew, I'm really zooming today. I might even beat my record for fastest delivery. And then back in the mailbox, Frog says, you know, Toad, it might take a while for Snail to get here, maybe a little longer than I thought. But Toad is so happy that he doesn't mind the wait at all. And instead of just sitting on the porch the whole time, in this version, Frog and Toad play checkers together on a little table and chairs out in the yard, lie on the ground watching the clouds. And then, hey, what do you know? Toad is reading a book to Frog, just like on the cover of Frog and Toad Are Friends. Except this version is right next to Toad's mailbox, and we're not surrounded by mushrooms like they are in the book cover. Okay, so apparently they did sit there all day, because we see Frog and Toad sitting on the front porch together, and the sun's going down, and Frog and Toad are sitting pretty close. Frog has his arm around Toad. I mean, these two friends love each other like family. They get along better than brothers. Almost like father and son, actually. And later that night, they got a blanket and pillows out on the ground. They're lying there watching the fireflies. So at least they're doing something together and not just sitting on the porch waiting all day. Just in the John Matthews version, it was just kind of, oh me, why doesn't he hurry? Do I have to wait this long? Yeah, the John Matthews version is a lot more depressing than this. I think I like this version better. Oh, and as they're showing us all these things, them doing the different activities as they're waiting, they've got these hand-drawn borders around the pictures, and we see like a white background around them. Like on the screen, they've got these squares with a picture inside, very similar to the illustrations in the book. So that's kind of cool. It's almost like they're putting the storybook onto the TV. And the last picture showed Frog and Toad having tea together on the porch. Now they're sitting on the porch again later, I guess. Maybe it is 4 days later. That's what the book says anyway. And Frog's sitting there, he's wide awake, and Toad's just kind of sleeping next to him. And Frog sees Snail coming along. Frog says, Toad, wake up, here comes Snail. Toad runs over to the mailbox, and Snail says, Jeepers, Toad, I've never seen you move so fast. And they say hello, and they talk about the letter, and Snail says, Yep, I got it right here. And the reason he says it like that is because she's got the letter between her lips, and Toad grabs it and looks at it, and holds it close to his chest, and takes a deep breath. And Frog says, Aren't you going to open it? And Toad says, I am savoring the moment. Just like in the previous episode with the cookies, when Frog tasted the cookie for the first time, he took it slowly to try to savor it, and now Toad's doing the same thing here with his letter. Cool. He says, Good weight, fine looking envelope, beautiful stamp, and he opens up the letter and reads it. And sure enough, it says, Dear Toad, I'm glad you're my best friend, your best friend Frog. And Snail asks what it says, and Toad reads it, and Snail agrees that it's a very good letter. And Toad thanks Frog and gives him a hug. And then Toad thanks Snail for the delivery, and Snail says, Oh, I'm not done here yet. There's lots more mail for you today. And Snail shakes out her mail bag, and a huge pile of letters comes out. So okay, where'd all those letters come from for Toad? Oh, wait a minute! When Frog mailed the letter, he stopped and said hello to all the other animals along the way, and so everybody knew that Toad had never gotten a letter before, and so they all decided to write letters to Toad. Oh, that is brilliant! That was smart. Very great. And Toad even got a note from Robin with another shiny string, and Toad got a poem from Mole. The paper's a little bit dirty. I guess Mole does live underground, in lots of underground tunnels where there's a bunch of dirt and stuff. And Rabbit wrote a recipe for carrots muffins on a postcard shaped like a carrot. Did we see Rabbit earlier? I don't remember. Let's see. We saw Mole, and then Robin, and Mink. There was someone else too. Yeah, and there was Mole. I haven't watched these enough times to remember every detail. I'm just kind of watching it as I record and telling you what I see. But anyway, you probably remember what I said if there was a rabbit or not. If there was, I would have pointed it out to you. But Rabbit was originally from the ice cream story. She was one of the characters that was frightened of Toad when he got all messy and he was walking along, looked like a big brown monster. And Toad even got a letter from Snail herself, which looks kind of slimy. Is that supposed to be like Snail's saliva or trail slime or something? Ew. But that was still nice. And then it's time for Snail to leave. They say goodbye, and Snail says, I'm sure I'll be back soon to put lots more mail in your mailbox. Frog asks Toad, So, did you like your mail? Toad says, Yes, I did. This mail was all very nice, but you know what? I still like your letter best. And Frog says, Aw. And he picks up one more and says, Hey, look, it's a coupon for Mink's Ice Cream Shop. Buy one ice cream, get one free. And that's it for that episode. And now we got the credit roll, which looks very much like the original book illustrations, maybe even more than the main show. Now, in this closing sequence, we actually do have a theme song. It starts out with, "We woke up and found a door only us kids could explore, so we opened it to see what was behind. I will keep your secret safe with mine." Do, 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 do. Let's see what pictures we have here in this background. Like, they're kind of still pictures, but they kind of, like, move around a little bit, like just 2 frames or so. So first we see Frog and Toad flying the kite. I believe this was in the table of contents in one of the books. Yep, that was the picture in the contents page of Frog and Toad Together, based on the books by Arnold Lobel, executive producer and head writer Rob Hoge or Hoagie, Hoegee. Executive producers Adam and Adrian Lobel. I wonder if those are Arnold Lobel's kids, somebody in the Lobel family. That's cool. In the second picture in the credits, we see Frog and Toad in Toad's garden, and his seeds had just started to grow. That's the second to last picture of that story. Oh, now that picture there, that's definitely the front cover of Frog and Toad Are Friends, because in that one, we see Toad actually sitting on the mushroom. Starring Nat Faxon as Frog, Kevin Michael Richardson as Toad. Okay, Nat Faxon did a bunch of other movies and TV shows, none of which I really recognize. What did Kevin Michael Richardson do? Okay, so apparently Kevin played Captain Gantu in Lilo and Stitch. He played P. Biggie in the movie Hoodwinked, Ian the Gator in The Princess and the Frog, Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars The Clone Wars. He played Grimace in The Wacky Adventures of Ronald McDonald, Space Ranger in Buzz Lightyear of Star Command, The Adventure Begins. Somebody on Clifford the Big Red Dog named Bruno. I'm trying to remember who was Bruno, because I watched that show. Some kind of truck driver. He played Slim Possible in Kim Possible. In Teen Titans, he was Mammoth, Seymour, Trigon, River Guardian, Cave Guardian, Tremendous Jackson, and Jimmy Neutron. Hey, Uncle Lemo from Higglytown Heroes! The guy who worked at the diner! Oh, that's the guy who played Toad. Nice! That's a show that I watched a lot when I was a kid. Yeah, this guy has a huge resume. Did all kind of stuff. He played Donnie in Adventure Time, Sheriff Blubbs in Gravity Falls, Mr. Gus in Steven Universe. Yo! Romulus in Star vs. the Forces of Evil. Okay. Never would have guessed that that was Toad. Mr. Flower in Amphibia. Tarek in The Owl House. Principal Nichols in Big Nate. Yeah, this is a lot of fun seeing what all these actors did. Now that picture there with Frog and Toad sitting in the tree with all the steps on it reading books. I wonder which book that one's from. Is that Days with Frog and Toad? It's not in the first 3. Yep, that's what that was, the contents page in Days with Frog and Toad. I'm not going to go through the entire cast list right now. We'll do that another time. Frog and Toad theme by Robert Francis. Here we see Frog and Toad asleep together, and right beneath Toad there was a note on the ground that says, "Go to sleep," and he crossed it out. That's from the story about the list. Original score and songs by Mark Evans. And there's Toad in bed watching, Frog in bed watching Toad stand on his head from the story about the story. And there they are sitting under the tree eating ice cream. And there's yet another picture of Toad reading a book to Frog. And that is the table of contents page from Frog and Toad Are Friends, but it's reversed. Here we see Toad sitting on a rock underneath the mushroom on the left, and Frog laying on his belly on the ground to the right of him. In the book, it's the other way around. There's another picture from the list story. It's the one where Frog and Toad are just sitting there doing nothing, and the sun's going down. And the second to last picture in the credits is actually the final picture in the book series. The two of them are sitting together on a rock in the middle of the river, and Toad's got his picnic baskets. That's from the end of the Alone story, the final chapter of Days of Frog and Toad. And the last picture is Frog and Toad looking for Toad's button. And there's the copyright, 2023, Apple Video Programming, LLC. And Frog and Toad is a production of Titmouse Animation, for this blue bird. Titmouse is the kind of bird that it is. It's kind of a modern-looking 2D animated bird and just says chirp. Like, literally just says the onomatopoeia word, kind of just, yeah, sure, whatever. Chirp. Oh, that's so weird. And then, of course, we have a fancy blue logo for Apple Studios. And that's it, folks. That was Frog and Toad, Season 1, Episode 1, Cookies, and the Letter. And of course, the theme song ends with, "Be the wheels to my road, be the frog to my toad. We can be anything that we want to be. Now the sun is going down on that other side of town tonight." So yeah, so far so good. This is an interesting show. The cookie story was pretty much exactly like the book, except we also got to see some more ways that Frog and Toad were trying to hide the cookies from themselves. And in the letter, they made that one a lot more interesting by Frog talking to all the other characters in town, and then in the end, they all gave letters to Toad as well. So yeah, I'm liking it so far. If I have any criticisms at all about these two episodes, well, with cookies, I would have liked to have seen a little bit more of a demonstration of what willpower is supposed to look like, as opposed to just Frog and Toad trying to figure it out but never really getting there. And also, in the letter was a great episode, both of them were, but in the letter, I feel like we could have seen at least a scene with Toad or Frog telling Toad that if you want to get more letters in the future from your friends, it might be a good idea to write some letters to your friends and then they can respond to them. Because that's how they handled it on Little Bill in the episode I Got a Letter. And the letter story in Frog and Toad also reminds me of the Koala Brothers episode George's Letter, in which George is the mailman. He hardly ever got any letters for himself, even though he delivered letters to everybody else. And so Missy gave him a letter, and he was really excited about that. And then all of his other friends started giving him letters too. And then George, being the good friend that he is, wrote letters back to all of his friends. So that was good. It would have been nice if we could have seen something about responding to letters from your friends in Frog and Toad. But other than that, I think these two episodes were borderline perfect. Apple TV's rendition of Frog and Toad is really doing a great job at staying true to the original source material, while also putting their own spin on it and making it a lot more fun, adding some more parts to the story to make it even better, actually. I don't know which I like better yet, this version or the John Matthews version. Because like I said, the John Matthews claymation shorts were some of my all-time favorites when I was a kid. But yeah, seeing a 2D animated series based on the Frog and Toad books that looks exactly like the book is really a lot of fun, especially since it's a similar animation style to the kind of cartoons that I grew up with. And also the voices of Frog and Toad sound very similar to the way Arnold Lobel himself portrayed his characters in the audiobooks that he narrated himself. In the John Matthews version, Frog and Toad were played by Will Ryan and Hal Smith. And here on Apple TV, they're played by Nat Faxon and Kevin Michael Richards. So that'll do it for this week. This is a little bit of a shorter podcast this time. These newer shows, Frog and Toad and Harriet the Spy, I honestly don't really have near as much to say about these shows as I do about my childhood favorites like Reading Rainbow and Kipper. Because with Reading Rainbow and Kipper, I've had 25 years to think about it. Whereas Frog and Toad and Harriet, I've only started watching these like literally last year. So just because I don't have as much to say about these newer shows doesn't mean they're not as good. It's just that with the older classics, I have a lot more memories to talk about. So next month, we will do some more Frog and Toad. So if you come back in February, we'll talk about Season 1, Episode 2, A and B, Ice Cream, and A Lost Button. Ice Cream is the third chapter of the book Frog and Toad All Year, and A Lost Button is the third chapter of Frog and Toad Are Friends. So that'll be a lot of fun. That'll be next month. Next week, we're going to take a look at the very first episode of one of my absolute favorite cartoons of the 2020s, Harriet the Spy, based on the book by Louise Fitzhugh. Looking forward to that. The first episode of Harriet the Spy is called I Am a Terrible Spy. I have seen it, though, and it's actually not a terrible episode. It's actually a very fun show, and I'm super excited to talk to you guys about it next week. Until then, this is Joshua Stauffer, signing out. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time. Kids TV and Me is a fan-made podcast and is not affiliated with any of the programs, production companies, or networks mentioned on the show. My primary goal with this podcast is to shine a spotlight on some of the underrated classics from my childhood, and to help you make informed decisions about your children's screen time. If you are enjoying this podcast, don't forget to leave a rating and a review. And if your podcast provider has a comment section, let me know your thoughts on the topics we've talked about today. To keep the conversation going, you can also leave me a message on Instagram at Joshua Stauffer Creations. And don't forget to check out my Substack page at joshuastauffer1.substack.com, where you can find more information on my other creative works, including my Little Joshua webcomics, and my book, Meet Zoe Richards, which is available in paperback on Amazon. Remember to always pay close attention to what your children are watching, and as always, don't be childish, but stay childlike.